every covenant that God makes with people after the fall is a covenant that would be incorporated under the general heading, the covenant of grace. Because for God to even provide a way of salvation after the original covenant is violated gives testimony to the marvelous grace of His very being. So the first covenant that we meet after the fall of Adam and Eve is called the Noahic covenant. That is, it's the covenant that God made with Noah. And there are some, I think, very important dimensions to the Noahic covenant. And for us to grasp them, we have to try to fill in the blanks between the time of the fall of Adam and Eve and the appearance of Noah on the historical scene. Immediately after the fall of Adam and Eve, we see, first of all, what I call the radical expansion of evil. And this is manifested initially in the unspeakable horror of fratricide that is recorded for us in the Bible when Cain, out of jealousy, murders his brother Abel, and how the ground was filled with the blood of Abel, and that blood, as it were, cried out for vengeance before God. And so we read of God's curse upon Cain. But there's still a third son of Adam and Eve, whose name is Seth. And so we get, following the murder of Abel by Cain and the birth of Seth, an extended genealogy both of Seth and of Cain. And then we read in chapter 6 of Genesis, verse 1, these words. Now it came to pass, when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born to them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were beautiful, and they took wives for themselves of all whom they chose. And this is another one of those foreboding introductory statements, because what immediately follows after this apparently incidental report of the intermarriage between the sons of God and the daughters of men, that we see the full impact of the radical expansion of evil to such a degree that God says at this point, my spirit shall not strive with man forever, for he is indeed flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. And there were giants on the earth in those days, and also afterwards, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. These were the mighty men who were of old, men of renown. Then the Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every intent of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And the Lord was sorry that he had made man on the earth, and was grieved in his heart. And so he said, I will destroy man whom I have created from the face of the earth, both man and beast, creeping thing, birds of the air, for I'm sorry that I made them. But Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. Now, again, we have to ask the question, what's going on here? This incident that is recorded in Genesis of the expansion of evil is so bad that God says now, my spirit will not strive with men forever. And the concept there of striving has to do with the Spirit's exercising restraint. One of the things that we have to understand, as much sin as there is in the world, as much sin as there is in our lives, were it not for the added grace of the restraining power of God, we would all be much more wicked than we actually are. We distinguish in Reformed theology between total depravity and utter depravity. We say that fallen man is totally depraved insofar as depravity penetrates the whole of our humanity, our minds, our wills, our hearts, our bodies. But that doesn't mean we're as bad as we possibly can be. And the reason why we're not as bad as we possibly can be is because restraints have been put upon us by God. One of the interesting exercises I'll often do with seminary students is ask them to list the people that they believe were the most wicked people that ever lived. And inevitably, the names that will come out will be names like Nero and Hitler and Stalin and people of that ilk. And I say, you notice that these people all have something in common. That is, that they were dictators who had unlimited national power. There were no restraints upon them within their own country. The only restraints that were put upon Hitler or upon Stalin were the restraints from other countries. But in their own sphere of authority, they were unrestrained. And that's where we get the idea that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely, except when it applies to God, of course. But the idea being is you take off the restraints, remove the checks and the balances, take the leash off the human heart, and unspeakable sin begins to reign. And that's what happened. God says, I've had enough of this. I'm going to remove the restraints. And at that point, the desires of the human heart were only wicked continually. And it's at that stage that God decides to destroy the creation with the flood. Now again, we have this incidental report of the intermarriage between the sons of God and the daughters of men. Now a lot of people think that what this involved was a kind of celestial rape of human women by fallen angels, because there are occasions in the Bible where angels are described as the sons of God. And so the idea is that the angels come down and intermarry with women and produce this bizarre race of radically evil people. I think, frankly, that that completely is out of place in biblical literature. I don't think that's what the Bible means at all. I think the clue to understand what's going on here is the amount of time that is given in the early chapters of Genesis to give us the genealogies of Cain and the genealogies of Seth. You see these two lines coming down from Adam and Eve, the line of Cain and the line of Seth. And if you look at these genealogies carefully, you will see that the line of Cain is the begetting of one criminal after another. The line of Cain reads like a rogue's gallery, where the sin of the father Cain is visited and recapitulated in the lives of his descendants. And yet when you look at the line next to it, of the line of Seth, you see one godly person after another, culminating in Enoch, who walked with God and was not, presumably who was translated directly into heaven. And so these two lines are clearly distinguished in the book of Genesis. And those who are obedient to God can, as the scriptures use the term, be called the sons of God. Now, I think what you have here in the text is the intermarriage between the descendants of Seth, who were obedient and the sons of God, and they took wives from the line of Cain. And these two lines now became merged and blended, and the sin was so characteristic of the line of Cain now engulfed the descendants of Seth, and the whole world now is plunged into this situation of radical evil. But we're told, and this is important for the understanding of this covenant, Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. And it is the grace of God then that defines God's relationship with Noah. And we read in verse 9, this is of chapter 6, this is the genealogy of Noah. Noah was a just man, perfect in his generations. Now we have to be careful. That doesn't mean that he was without sin. The word perfect means complete. That as people went on this planet, Noah was in a class by himself and stood out from the rest of the ruined humanity. And Noah walked with God, which is the highest honor that you could give to a human being at this point in redemptive history. And then we're told that Noah begot 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. But the earth also was corrupt before God, and the earth was filled with violence. And so God looked upon the earth, and indeed it was corrupt, and all flesh had corrupted their way on the earth. And so it's at this point that God announces to his servant Noah that the end of all things has come before me, for the earth is filled with violence, and I'm going to destroy them with the earth. And he gives the instructions for the building of the ark and those whom God commands him to bring upon the ark. So in chapter 7, verse 7, Noah with his sons, his wife, and his sons' wives went into the ark because of the waters of the earth. And the day that they entered, the Lord shut them in, and the waters came upon the earth for 40 days. And we all know the story of the ark and then the deliverance of Noah and his family from the ark. And then in chapter 8, verse 20, after the flood waters have receded and Noah and his family have survived the deluge, God makes his covenant with Noah, beginning in chapter 8, verse 20. Here's what it said. Then Noah built an altar to the Lord, took every clean animal, every clean bird, and offered burnt offerings on the altar. And the Lord smelled a soothing aroma. Then the Lord said in his heart, I will never again curse the ground for man's sake, although the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth, nor will I again destroy every living thing as I have done. Now do you see that the terms of this covenant that God makes with Noah involves promises? Where God says, I'm making a promise. I'm not going to destroy the earth with a curse. I'm not going to destroy every living thing as I have done. While the earth remains, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, winter and summer, day and night shall not cease. That is the pattern, the rhythm, the cycle of nature will continue until the world is redeemed. Now this is important because in the concept of redemption in Scripture, in the covenant of grace, according to the New Testament, what we learn, for example, from Paul in his letter to the Romans, that the beneficiaries of God's covenant of grace are not only human beings, but the plant kingdom, the animal kingdom, the whole earth, because the whole of the earth is plunged into the curse because of the fall of the ones whom God has set as his vicegerents over the earth. He gave dominion over the earth, over the animals, over the fish, over the ground, and all that to Adam and Eve. When they fell, the curse that beset man also fell upon the whole earth. And so when we are redeemed, with our redemption comes the redemption of the entire earth. That's why we say that Christ is the cosmic Christ. He is the one who brings cosmic redemption. And Paul says the whole creation groans together in travail, waiting for the manifestation of the sons of God. That is, waiting for our redemption. Now, so we see in the promise to Noah, the promise of the ongoing cycle of nature until the final restoration of all things. And so God blessed Noah and his sons and said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. And the fear of you and the dread of you shall be on every beast of the earth, on every bird of the air, and all that move on earth, and all the fish of the sea. They are given into your hand. Every moving thing that lives shall be food for you. You know, let those who say that the Christian has to be a vegetarian read these texts. I have given you all things, even as the green herbs, but you shall not eat flesh with its life, that is, with its blood. For surely for your lifeblood I will demand a reckoning. From the hand of every beast I will require it, and from the hand of man. From the hand of every man's brother I will require the life of man. Now, again, we see in the first instance that the Noahic covenant, in many regards, is a reconstitution of the covenant of creation. It's not a covenant that God makes with a certain ethnic group, like with Abram and his sons, or with Moses, but rather it's again, now in a sense, Noah is functioning in a similar capacity to what Adam had before the fall, because God now has wiped out all of the wicked descendants of Adam, and as it were, is beginning again. He is reordering and restructuring the covenant of creation. And that's why we see with the promises of this covenant also come obligations that are very similar to the obligations that God had given to Adam and Eve when He told them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. Now that command is reiterated to Noah. And this mandate, which is one of the most misunderstood and controversial texts from all of the book of Genesis. Whoever sheds man's blood, by man his blood shall be shed. For the image of God he made man. As for you, be fruitful and multiply. Bring forth abundantly in the earth and multiply in it. Now, there are many people who come to this text in Genesis and read it merely as a prophecy that means something like this: those who live by the sword shall die by the sword. That's not what it is, but rather it is the covenantal institution of capital punishment. Indeed, it's important to understand that this principle here is not something given to Moses for the economy of the Mosaic covenant or to Abraham, but since this is the reconstitution of the creation covenant, this principle or this law given to Noah affects all mankind. Every person in every generation and every culture is to be under this principle of capital punishment. And again, not only does God give the command when He says, "But whoever sheds man's blood, by man shall his blood be shed." This is in the imperative. This is a command. That person must be killed. And so God doesn't just give the magistrate now the right of capital punishment. He gives the magistrate the duty of capital punishment. And that's what causes so much controversy. Now, I remember reading an article from Larry King in which he was complaining about Christians constantly protesting against abortion laws in the United States. And he said he would not take the Christian community's protest against abortion seriously until these same people would mobilize against capital punishment. And when he said that, he revealed that he didn't understand the biblical rationale, which is the same in both cases. What is behind the church's protest against abortion and what is behind the historic Christian community's backing of capital punishment is the concept of the sanctity of life. And people who oppose capital punishment oppose it appealing to the same principle. The principle is that every human life is sacred, and if a person chooses to murder another human being, we're just adding to the desacralization of life by executing the murderer. Then the point is that everybody's life is sacred, even the murderer. And so we have to do something besides retaliate with revenge or so on. But the point of the original institution of capital punishment is not for deterrence. It's not even for vengeance. It's to maintain God's directive that every human life is sacred. Now notice what he says. Whoever sheds man's blood, by man his blood shall be shed. For in the image of God he made man. The rationale that God gives for requiring the death of the murderer is that in a very real sense, the person who raises his hand to slay a human being is making an assault not just on a fellow human, but is making an assault against God. Because every human being is the image bearer of God. And when you kill a human being, you kill somebody who is bearing the image of God. And God is saying that to be in the image of God is so sacred and so holy that if somebody wantonly destroys an image bearer of God, God says that person forfeits their right to human life, and they are to be executed. So the punishment for murder God establishes not just in the Mosaic economy, but in the Noahic economy is the death penalty. All right. Now, then God spoke to Noah and his sons, saying, As for me, behold, I establish my covenant with you and your descendants after you, with every living creature that is with you, the birds, the cattle, the beasts of the earth, of all of you that go out of the ark, every beast of the earth. Thus I establish my covenant with you. Never again shall all flesh be cut off by the waters of the flood. Never again shall there be a flood to destroy the earth. And God said, This is the sign of the covenant which I make between me and you and every living creature that was with you for perpetual generations. I set my rainbow in the cloud, and it shall be for the sign of the covenant between me and the earth. It shall be when I bring a cloud over the earth, that the rainbow shall be seen in the cloud. And I will remember my covenant which is between me and you and every living creature. The rainbow shall be in the cloud, and I will look on it to remember the everlasting covenant between God and every living creature. Again, the terms of this promise underscore that this is not a local covenant or simply a particular ethnic covenant, but it is with the whole world, that it is again the re-establishing of the covenant of creation. And it is to be perpetual. God says, every time it rains and you see the rainbow, that is my sign in the sky. That marks the sacred promise that I am swearing to you, that I will keep this promise unto all generations. And it is God's promise to preserve His creation, which creation is the context for His plan of redemption.
I'll be all right. You don't have to stay. If you've already chosen, I won't stand in your way. I can feel it in your distance, in the way you barely speak, like your heart is somewhere else now, somewhere I can't reach. I was trying just to hold us while you slowly slipped away. Now I'm left with all the silence you didn't want to say. Maybe I just held on to something already gone. I'll be fine, you can leave. You don't owe me anything. If your heart has found a way out of what we used to be, I'll be fine, don't look back. I'll survive this empty space. Not tonight, maybe not soon, but I'll learn to be okay. We don't need to fake the feeling, I can see it in your eyes. There's no reason left for staying when the love already died. Through the quiet in your voice, I can hear your choice. I'll be fine, you can leave. You don't owe me anything. If your heart has found a way out of what we used to be, I'll be fine, don't look back. I'll survive this empty space. Not tonight, maybe not soon, but I'll learn to be okay. I don't need a reason why, I can see it in goodbye. And it breaks me, yeah, it does, but I won't ask you to stay. I'll be fine, you can leave. You don't owe me anything. If your heart has found a way out of what we used to be, I'll be fine, don't look back. I'll survive this empty space. Not tonight, maybe not soon, but I'll learn to be okay. I'll be all right.